Ladies and gentlemen, we both grew up playing these guitars. We are absolutely honored to have this guest on the show today. Welcome to the show, Mr. Grover Jackson. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
I appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's an absolute honor. One of the things we always ask our guests, and I'm really curious about this one, is do you remember your first music memory that made you want to be involved with music by chance?
Uh, First musical memory. I mean, that's such a long, I'm so old that fucking way over a half a century ago.
Was it like the
Um,
Beatles on Ed Sullivan? Was it
no, it was earlier than that. It would have been the popular music of the early 60s.
okay?
Um, Pre-Beatles, I was not that affected by the Beatles. I was much more affected by the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
Uh, I always went to that sort of side rather than the Beatles side. But I was already a big fan of, well, in particular, the Everly Brothers.
Okay.
Huge Everly Brothers fan. Um, which one of those full circle moments, I don't remember what year it was, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It would be easy to research. Um, I had the opportunity, and I mean, I've known quite a few, famous, quote unquote, famous people. And so I don't turn into a little girl easy.
Right.
But about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to spend an afternoon with Phil Everly 3 months before he died, 3 or 4 months before
Oh,
he
wow.
passed away. And that's one of those moments when I turned into a little girl. I mean, I just fanboy like crazy.
Sure.
And it was, like I said, it was right at the end of his life. And we were using his son had a string company, and we were using the strings. And I was going to go up to the valley to pick up some strings, and they said, "Well, if you come on this day, maybe somebody will be here." Left it that sort of
Yeah.
obscure. And we got there, and sure enough, about 45 minutes after we got there, Phil fucking Everly walked in the door, and I just
Wow.
holy shit. I mean, there's famous people, and then there's people that are beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That influenced the Beatles, the guy that set them on their course.
Sure.
And he spent 2, 3 hours with us, and we talked and hung out. And he was so sweet and generous. And we talked about guitars and music and songwriting. And it was one of those. There's a lot of wonderful events that have happened in my life, but that was a crowning event, sort of full circle thing, because I had been such a fan when they were young and when I was young. But I just would relate one other little thing that was really important to me that has come to memory not too long ago. Um, I grew up about 100 miles from here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or just outside of Chattanooga, down a dirt road. And I can remember having my little transistor radio, with the one little earplug, and that was high tech. And I can remember a hot October afternoon walking the 2 blocks it was down this little dirt road to where the mailboxes were, and opening the mailbox, and there was a brown manila envelope in there, and it said Fender Musical Instruments, Fullerton, California. It was a catalog. I had written a letter for a catalog, and they sent me a catalog. And at night, I would, after everybody had gone to bed, I'd covers over my head. I had a flashlight, I had this little transistor radio, and I would page through this 6 or 7 page Fender catalog. And I thought, um, if you could ever own a Telecaster, you would be the king of the world. You'd be the king of the universe. Because another one of my favorites, and another sort of full cycle moment recently, one of the highlights of the week for me was the Ozzy and Harriet show. And then
Yeah.
Ricky would do it, not every episode, but many episodes, he would do a song at the end of the show. And there's James Burton with the Telecaster and the 12 guitar. And it was, you know, that was the god of guitars. And about 6 months ago, I went into my friend's shop, Joe Blazer, up in Nashville, and there he is standing there talking to James Burton.
Oh, wow.
You know, I shied away. I didn't horn in on their conversation, but those are the sort of memories. And a little bit further about the cover over the head of the transistor radio. I think the first 100,000 watt radio station in the South, this is early 60s, was WLAC in Nashville. And at night, radio broadcast waves go a long distance. So in Chattanooga, 100 miles away, I could get WLAC on this old transistor radio. And at midnight, and you can look this up, there are YouTube videos about the John R. Show, which was a show, I think it was 5 nights a week at midnight. And I think the station was probably either a country or pop sort of station. But at midnight, there was a 1 hour program called this John R. Show. And his show was all about R&B. So that, I mean, that's where I discovered Slim Harpo and Professor Longhair, all of that great, which is still my favorite music of probably ever, is the New Orleans music.
Okay.
Which was even swampier than, you know, Motown I could barely stand because it was too slick. And Stax was good. But when you get to New Orleans and all of that great Lee Dorsey and all of that music that came out of New Orleans, that was the stuff that was really influential to me. So I had my little Fender catalog and my earplug listening to, Bo Diddley, and those were instrumental early moments for me.
Awesome.
A real introduction to music.
When you start doing this, like I'm assuming you're going to start playing guitar right around this time too, because you got the bug, you want to do this. What made you get into like the nuts and bolts of the guitar in terms of like where your career took you? Like were you always fascinated by that, or was it like out of necessity where something
It was more necessity. My dad was a custom furniture maker, and we lived in a 2-story house that he built right after World War II. We lived upstairs, and my dad's shop was downstairs. And I would sit on the stairs and look around the corner of the stairwell into the shop, and my dad would holler, "Come sweep this up," and I would run over and sweep up and watch the guys work in his shop. And again, sort of a little side note, one of my things through my entire career that I'm pretty proud about is that people don't get hurt around me. I'm a safety nut. And the reason I'm a safety nut is that at about, I must have been 6 or 7, I watched my dad's best friend who worked for him saw his right forefinger off with a table saw.
Whoa.
And again, I was very young. And it's today, I'm 76, going to be 77 years old in July. That memory is still as fresh today as it was 70 years ago, that I saw the finger come off, things went in slow motion, his hand kind of came up, and the blood went. And my dad is in slow motion racing towards the stairwell. "Mom, get the car. TC cut his finger off." I still have that table saw. I own that table saw that was in my dad's shop. I kept it all these years as a memento of safety and how quick and how easy it is to get hurt around woodworking equipment. So basically, in my entire career, I've never had anybody, and I've hired hundreds and hundreds of people. Jackson Charvel at its height was somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 people. And I don't have accidents. Not serious. No, you cut yourself and it bleeds a little bit. That builds character. I'm fine with that. But in terms of limb loss,
Yeah.
that's and things that you're proud of. If you look back, if you start looking in the rearview mirror of your life, that's one of the things I'm proud of is that I don't have any mutilations in my under my watch. Let's say. So I'm off the topic. Sorry.
No,
No,
you're
that was
you're
great.
good. Yeah, and
Did,
that's actually something very important.
did you name the saw? I know it's a
No, it
stupid
just
question.
adds it's
Just
dad's saw.
okay.
It's not set up or anything. It's in a container, but I know it's there, and
Okay.
it's just this attachment to a physical object that has a particular memory for me that was so important. Um, they say measure twice and cut once.
Yeah.
For me, it's measure 22 times and cut once. Um, I just I don't want that on my watch. I don't want to have that as something I feel I should have taught somebody better. I should have been more instructive or whatever. I don't want that on me.
No, it's I
And again, a little bit of blood and stitches. I don't give a shit about that. That's character building.
yeah.
You know, and that's part of working around sharp objects is that those kinds of things happen. It's how do you keep somebody from hurting themselves permanently? So anyway,
No,
again, off the rails.
that's a great point. How do you get from Tennessee to California?
Oh, so um, could be interesting. In the late '60s, early '70s, Atlanta, there was Macon and the Allman Brothers and all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
then if you were playing in a band that did sort of English inspired rock and roll kind of music, um, if you take the 10, 12, 13, 14 states that comprise the South, um, there probably was not more than 20 or 25 places in that entire area that an original music type of band could play in. And Atlanta was the hub of that. Um, and there was one booking agent in Atlanta, Discovery Incorporated, which is a guy named Steve Cole, and he owned that. And so if you wanted to work in the South, I mean, there's plenty of work if you wanted to play, soul music or top 40 music. There's a million frat parties and high school dances you can play. But if you wanted to play original music, there was a very, very small sort of group of places that you could play. And the bands that played that circuit, which interestingly enough, very much mimics Los Angeles in the 80s. It sort of replicated itself as a phenomenon in the 80s. In the 80s, in the LA, Southern California area, there wasn't but 10 or 15 places to play, and there was 15 or 20 bands that played there regularly, which would have been, Van Halen and Quiet Riot, and Snow, and Stormer, and so that sort of phenomenon replicated itself 20 years later in a different part of the country. The upshot of that is that I was playing in a band in Atlanta and fell in love with a girl, and that I almost married 2 different times, 10 years apart. Both times she left me for doctors, but I left the South and went to California trying to mend a broken heart.
Okay.
So that's how I
Now,
I slept on my friend that I'd grown up with in Chattanooga had moved to California before me and was working for the railroad. And he had an apartment, and I slept on his living room floor, a block down San Vicente. San Vicente sort of dead ends into Sunset, and that's right where the whiskey is.
right.
So I was a block down from the whiskey, sleeping on his floor, and that was my first foray into California, which would have been '73. somewhere around
Okay, so yeah, so that's huge because the whiskey is enormous at that time. All like,
It
Jefferson,
was
the Doors.
most local bands couldn't play the whiskey. The
Right.
whiskey was sort of a step up. The local bands played the Zaris or the Starwood, and then that was really all there was in Hollywood. And then there was one place up in the valley. There was a place a little bit later out in the Pomona area across the street from General Dynamics. Um, there was a place down in Orange County, the Golden Bear, that people play. Again, very small group of. Again, if you wanted to play bars and play top 40 music, million places to play.
Right.
Van Halen couldn't play there. Okay, Quiet Riot couldn't play those other places. It was just very, and so everybody sort of a very clandestine, incestuous group of people that knew each other. There was, and to finish that rant maybe a little bit, in that group of bands, there were 5 guitar players that were the top of the crop. And Ed would have obviously been number 1.
Yeah.
Randy number 2.
George Lynch.
Lynch would have been number 3, a year or 2 younger than them, but he had Stormer. He had the Boys and Exciter were 2 different bands he had before Dokken. There was a band called Stormer in that era that never made it. The guitar player, and I like to talk about this guy because he's dead now and he's completely forgotten. His name was Jimmy Bates. He was an older guy. I was by that time 26, 28 years old, and those guys were 20, 22 years old. So, and when you're 22, somebody who's 28 is a grandfather, right? I mean, that's a gigantic age gap, But Bates was my age, so he was 27 or 28 years old. He was not a native Californian. He was a New Yorker, transplanted New Yorker, a little heavy set. An early receding hairline mullet, so he was bald about halfway back his head and kind of a thin drape of hair. Not because when you're that age and you're a rock star, you're pretty, okay? You're a handsome young dude, right? He wasn't. He never was. But he played everything everybody else was playing. Great guitar player. So that's number 4. And the 5th is the guy that I love to talk about, which is Terry Kilgore. I don't know if you know who that is.
Absolutely know who he is. He played with Roth in the early 90s. Yeah, I've heard many stories about how amazing of a player that guy was.
Well, I would say of those 5 guys, Kilgore, who I love, I mean, he's an irascible rascal of a guy, okay? He's still alive. Unfortunately, he lost his home in the fires, the LA fires.
Oh, no.
He was a high school schoolmate of Ed's. Had some substance abuse problems in his career and his band, which was called Ready Kilowatt. They didn't have great songs. Terry was a great guitar player. Terry, in my life, I've met a lot of great guitar players, and I mean, I'll probably be criticized for saying this, but I don't think Ed was a great guitar player, obviously, because he changed the landscape. Okay. But he was that good because his work ethic was unbelievable. He went to sleep with the guitar, woke up with the guitar, took a shit with the guitar. I mean, everything was with guitar. So
Yeah.
He sort of ground it out. Okay. And Terry is one of those people that picks up a guitar and it looks like he's just holding the instrument and you're hearing audio and you go, what the fuck is that? He's just literally one of the most natural guitar players I've ever met in my life. and a crazy guy, a fun, crazy guy. And I feel terrible doing it. The people that know about him is that's an undercurrent.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. He'll never have a big name, unfortunately, but a
No.
wonderful guitar player.
So
And you know the story about where the tapping thing came. You know that story?
I know a couple different stories, so why don't you enlighten us?
Well, and I mean I got this from the source at the pretty much at the time. Terry was going around Pasadena mowing the lawns one summer for guitar, amp, pick strings, whatever, money. Goes up to a door, knocks on the door. A guy comes to the door wearing a guitar, and Terry goes, "Oh, you play guitar?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, if I mow your lawn, will you give me guitar lessons?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And the guy, I can never remember his last name. It's Henry. He played with Canned Heat. He's one of the guys that auditioned with the Rolling Stones when Mick Taylor left the band. Never remember his last name. I had the hardest time with that. Anyway, this guy who had played with Canned Heat was an old time jazz guitar fan, and it's pretty well documented that the great jazz guitar player Tal Farlow, big Italian guy with gigantic hands,
Yeah.
way back in the 50s, would play these jazz chords and then take his right hand and add partials to the chords. Okay. And this guy was a fan of Tal Farlow's and had picked that technique up. And he showed it to Terry, and Terry showed it to his high school friend, Ed. And that's where that came from. Now, obviously, Ed took that to a completely different place.
Sure.
And just by way of credit, again, I'm an old guy. I came up in the 60s, and it was the big four in the 60s: Clapton, Page, Beck, and Hendrix. And that's ground zero for me. Everything emanates from those four people, right? But I'd have to say that Ed Van Halen has been more important than those guys in terms of impact on people wanting to play guitar, people wanting to emulate something. Ed's impact is immeasurable. Uh, there's guys that can play rings around that today. Okay, see some of these young guys, Japanese guys, they play stuff that's just unreal. Mancuso, the Italian kids,
Yeah.
unbelievable. But Van Halen was that package that was absolutely perfect. The technical brilliance of Ed, and then the show business savvy of Dave. Like him or not, David Lee Roth was a great showman.
Yep.
And Dave was the glue that held that whole thing together. And it would be hard to describe Van Halen as a metal band or hard rock dancing in the street. Please jump, please. Okay. So they had accessibility, they had songs, and then they had the superstar guitar player. So it's this glue that held everything together, where a lot of bands would have a great guitar player and shitty songs, or great songs and a shitty guitar player. And Van Halen just was the right place at the right time with the right stuff.
I agree with you 100%.
I'm way off the topic.
No,
Sorry.
dude, this is amazing. Like you are perfect. So when do you meet Wayne Charvel, and when do you start talking to these people and getting? Because I know back in the day, a lot of the guitars that like Lynch and Eddie and those guys were playing, they were tinkering with things, and I know they were getting, Den Electro, necks and other things. And like you said, it's a tight knit community back then. I do believe that too. I believe that you can hear Warren D. Martini and Jakey Lee and George Lynch, you can hear all that DNA in each other. I truly believe
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So when do you kind of meet Wayne, and then how does that go about in terms of you working for Wayne, and then you basically turning Charbel into Charbel Jackson?
So I made that first foray to California in '73, and about a year and a half later, I finally went home because I just got tired of being hungry. So I went back to the South and played in the old band for a year or so. In summer of '75, I think it was '75, the years run together on me a little bit. When I had been in California, I had known a guy named Joe Pollard, who has passed away, a great drummer. He played with the Beach Boys and the Spiral Staircase and the Grassroots, and great drummer. And his best friend was a guy named Larry Vallis, who is still alive and who I love more than anything. Larry, the Vallis family owned the Anvil Case Company. And again, there's so much historical sort of bric-a-brac that goes around the story. This is an era in Southern California where defense contracting was still huge. McDonnell Douglas was still there, Boeing was still there, and all of these big aerospace companies had employees that would leave and they would rent a little shop, and there would be some bolt or bracket or something that Boeing needed for an airplane, and they didn't want to set up to do it, so they knew this guy that used to be a machinist, and he had a little shop, and so they would job shop all this bric-a-brac out. And Anvil Case actually started as a company called Acme Pack, which when you sell stuff to the U.S. government, especially the military, it has to have mil spec packaging. Or these little shops that would make a widget or a bolt or whatever, they didn't have the facilities to properly package it to send it to the government, and that's what Acme Pack did. And that Anvil Acme Pack was a dad, Chuck Vallis, a son, Steve Vallis, another son, Larry Vallis, and a brother-in-law, Bob Cosgrove. And it was a lunatic asylum. Larry, who I love to talk about, Larry, and I'll come back to this in a minute. It's a story I've told before, but it's a good story.
Sure.
So Larry had lived in San Francisco Bay on a boat during the summer of love, '68, with a guy named Dolph Rimp. And Dolph, I think, is still alive. Dolph Rimp came from a wealthy family. His dad owned a company called Adolph's Meat Tenderizer, if you remember that product. It was popular for years. But they were attracted to the counterculture of San Francisco in the late '60s. And Larry had lived with one of the guys, it may have been Chuck Negron from Three Dog Night in Laurel Canyon. We say it's pure, Southern California kind of stuff. Larry knew everybody. God, I get started on this and I just ramble all over the place. So Larry went to his dad, the family business, Acme Pack, and said, we should be making cases for people to, this is when touring started to get big, and they had this facility to make boxes. And he said, we should make boxes for people to put instruments in. And that was the beginning of the Anvil Case Company. So, and they became very successful at that. And Joe and Larry knew each other because it's a very small and tight-knit community of musically related entities. So I end up the summer of '75 back on my parents' farm in East Tennessee, broke, no high school education. I had left high school in my senior, been thrown out of high school in my senior year, traveling with a band. I'm going crazy. It's summer 75. And I called Joe and I go, man, I need a job. And I need to get back to California. And he talked to Larry, and Larry said, okay, I'll get the kid a job. And my dad gave me a plane ticket, one-way plane ticket to California, $100. And I had a small suitcase and a large suitcase, and my entire world lived in those two suitcases. And I flew into LAX, and Joe picked me up and carried me out to Monrovia, where Anvil was. Now, unbeknownst to me, as I'm driving with Joe out to Monrovia, Larry calls his friend. Oh, I've left an element out. Dolph Rim had moved to LA, and he and a guy named Ken Berry had started a company called Studio Instrument Rentals. If you remember what that is, I mean, it's much smaller today.
Yeah, SIR. Yep.
Was a behemoth in the industry. And his partner, by the way, Ken Berry, his brother was Jan Berry of Jan and Dean.
Oh, wow.
And the third brother was the original road manager for Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So again, very incestuous. So I'm on the way out to Monrovia to meet Larry Vallis for the first time because he's hired me from 2,000 miles away in Tennessee. Well, unbeknownst to me, he'd called Dolph and said, hey, I hired this kid. And when he gets here, Joe's picking him up. And when he gets here, I'm going to ask him if he can sell stuff. And then he's going to say yes. And I'm going to have him call you and try to sell you some cases. And I want you to give him as hard a time as you can. So I walk in the door, 22 years old or something. Oh, yeah, hi, nice to meet you. Can you sell? I said, oh, yes, sir, absolutely. I know how to sell everything. I can sell anything. You can sell ice cream to escort. Hey, what do you want? What do you want? I can sell it. Says, okay, here, call this guy and sell him some cases. So I called Dolph Rimpa, and for at least 30 minutes, he stitches me up. I don't want any goddamn cases. Get out of my face. I don't know. Why are you calling me? I don't know you. Blah, 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 blah. It just goes on and on. Larry and Steve are dying, okay? I'm the comedic entertainment for the day. And finally they tell me, and that's how I started this relationship with him. But it was a lunatic asylum. The Vallises, that's a Greek name, and they were Greek, and they were, the lesson I learned there that the reason Western civilization is based in Greece is because Greeks love bigger and hate bigger than anybody. They don't hold anything back. It's all out, no waiting. I'm working there about 2 weeks trying to figure out how to sell something because I never sold anything in my life. And I'm sitting at a desk, pretending I'm busy, and there's a couple other ladies out in the office, and Larry and Steve, the two brothers, come in from the shop. And they're arguing. And one of them jumps on top of the desk and dives on his brother. And across the floor of the office, they go swinging arms at each other. And the ladies are acting like there's nothing going on. And I'm like, what kind of lunatic asylum am I in? And 30 minutes later, they get up and go to lunch together. So it was a wild, wild time, and they were wild people. The one other thing I'll say about Larry, and then I'll quit about Larry. I ran into Larry about 12, 13 years ago at a NAMM show. And we went out in one of the little outside areas where it's quieter, just to sit and talk for a few minutes because we had to catch up. And we're sitting there having this conversation. And I had spent a lot of time in Japan in my life. And in Japan, breaks in a conversation are completely normal. I don't know if you know anything about Japan or Japanese culture, but you can be in a meeting with 4 or 5 people, and the meeting will just come to a stop. Nobody will say it's over, and everybody just gets quiet and kind of contemplates what to say next. In Western culture, that makes people very uncomfortable. As soon as there's a stop in the conversation, it's like, what's wrong? What happened? piss somebody off or what's going on. So I had kind of gotten used to this Asian idea of it's okay for silence, for action to pause in a conversation. And that happened between Larry and I sitting outside. And he finally goes, you know what's wrong with the world today? And I went, oh shit, here it comes. He said, the big reveal. And I go, no, Larry, what's wrong with the world today? It makes me emotional to even say this. He said, people have no sense of grace. And I thought, fucking hell. And if we look at the world that we live in, the three of us live in today, what's missing? A sense of grace.
You're not wrong.
Oh, it's deep shit, man. So that's my take on Greeks. You asked about meeting Wayne Charvel. So I'm working at Anvil. The Vallises realize that they've gotten out of their debt and they decide to sell. They sell the company to an ex-IRS auditor, who was the biggest piece of shit asshole in the world. And I lasted about 6 months and I quit. And I thought, well, I need to get a guitar. And I've been away from guitar playing for a few years, but I'll go back and try to find me a job playing guitar. So Charvel Guitar Repair was a little guitar repair shop in Azusa, California. And they had a reputation for doing guitar repair. And I went out and met with the owner, Wayne Charvel. We went to lunch. And I said, I need to he had some early boogie bodies. They weren't making anything. It was a guitar repair shop. There was no manufacturing. It was only guitar repair. But they were putting a few guitars together, mainly out of Fender. They were a Fender refinish station. And so that's in that era, Fender had a service department that sold spare parts at the corner of Valencia and Raymond in Fullerton. And they would cobble a few guitars together out of parts that they bought. And I went to lunch with Wayne, and I with the intention to buy a body and a neck, put it together myself, and try to be a guitar player. And he was lamenting the fact that he had this relationship with Schecter, which was really two guys that had a company called International Sales Associates. And they had sued him. He had separated from them and they'd sued him. He says, I'm going to have to go bankrupt. And so in a fit of entrepreneurial whatever, I said, well, how about I come and work for free? And if I can save your company, then I get 10% of the company. And he agreed to that because it wasn't going to cost him anything. And my girlfriend, later my wife, was still working at Anvil, so she was feeding me and she was paying the rent. And we worked like that from 1977 until the fall of 1978. At which point Wayne Charvel came and said, I got to go bankrupt. They have a thing in California called the Homestead Act. If you are a sole proprietor, you can register your home with the Secretary of State, and it's judgment proof. So you're a sole proprietor, but somebody gets a judgment against you, they can't take your house. And he had a homestead at his home. I said, well, that's great, but you got a year of my ass here. I've been working, getting no wages. At least you ought to give me a chance to buy this. And the company was about $33,000 in debt for trade liabilities. And he said, I want to leave with $6,000. So a little less than $40,000 was the purchase price. I borrowed $7,500 from my dad, who said, if you squander this money, don't come home. And I bought on November 10, 1978, I bought Charvel Guitar Repair.
Wow.
And that was the beginning. Wayne left, moved to Yucaipa, and or Redlands, one of the two. And I had two employees, Mark McKee and Carl Sandoval. Carl Sandoval being the guy that made the black and white polka dot, not in my shop, but this was that he made that afterwards. And that was November 10, 1978. By January 1st, both employees had quit. So now I'm in the building, this little 1,200 square foot building in San Dimas by myself. And started using the contacts that I had made at Anvil to sell parts. I made the bodies the early bodies were made for Mighty Might. And then the later bodies were made for DiMarzio. And then that gets us through the first year. By late 79, I've figured out how to make necks and just made the earliest guitars. First show we went to was either 79 or 80. I'd have to do some research to figure it. Went to Atlanta and went to the first NAMM show, and Venom and Music in DC bought the first guitars we ever made. And my friend Gary Kaler years ago had described business to me as a three-legged stool. You have to work hard, you can't be stupid, and the third leg of the stool is you got to be lucky. And I was lucky. I did work hard. I made some good decisions and some shitty decisions. But I was right there at ground zero of a movement that became the 80s.
Yeah.
And my analogy that I've used over the years for that is how important that is, that element of luck, this completely intangible thing. Is what if the Beatles had come from Buenos Aires? Nobody would have ever heard from them. You know, the Beatles from Tokyo. No, the Beatles were really smart. They wrote great songs, and they were really lucky that they were in a particular place at a particular time where human beings decided that that was desirable, this thing. And that's how I felt like I was in the early 80s. I was in the right place at the right time.
So let me ask you.
Does that answer your question, or did I ramble too far?
No, you're great. So let me ask you this. So does Carl introduce you to Randy Rhoads?
No.
Or you knew Randy Rhoads beforehand?
No, I didn't know him at all.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you knew who the cast of, because again, it was so contained. You knew who people were, but I didn't go into town to go to shows. I was working 18 hours a day trying to save a business. So I didn't have to explain to my dad that I pissed his money away.
Right.
And so I knew who Randy was. And again, the modesty of the situation is really hard to grasp given the size of the entertainment industry today. But Randy was just a local guy who had been in a band that couldn't get a record deal, even though Van Halen had done well. They couldn't get a record deal, and there's some reasons for that, which I would have to character assassinate somebody, but I won't do that. Let's just say that they'd been in every record company in Los Angeles, and nobody would take them. And I think on a whim, Randy went and did the audition with a drunk, drug-addicted ex-Black Sabbath singer who became the Prince of Darkness, okay, but and that's well documented, even in Sharon's book.
Yeah.
I think that's well documented, that Ozzy was in rough shape. So it wasn't like he got a big gig, but he got the gig, and off they went to England. They recorded the first record, released it in Europe, had not been released in the US. And Randy came home to spend Christmas with his mom. And on December 23rd of that year, he called out of the blue. I'd already turned all the employees at that point loose for Christmas. when I say all of the employees, at that point, it was probably 12 people, something like that, 10 or 12. And I'm in the building by myself. And he says, hey, I want to get a guitar made. And I said, sure, come on out. He came out at noon on the 23rd, and we sat there for 12 hours. Finally, it was midnight, and we said, oh shit, we better go. But I think that was the focus of this interview, was Randy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I got to you through Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would hasten to say that I just never think of Randy in terms of guitar or guitar playing. I think of him in terms of this guy that was so eminently likable, had none of the bravado and, you know, sort of testosterone driven stuff that guitar players are prone to be. He didn't have any of that. He was just this really warm, nice guy. And that's I remember my friend. I don't remember the solo in this song or that. I don't know any of that stuff. It was never important to me. It was just this guy that I knew and liked, who was eminently likable. So I don't know what all Andrew said in the interview.
So let me ask you this. So you spend that 12 hours with him, and you've never really hung out with him or anything before that. He just calls up the shop.
Never met him before.
Okay, yeah. So then after that, like, you guys start develop a friendship, obviously, and then you're talking about building him instruments, and I believe you built him 3. Is that correct?
Well, he had a cocktail napkin with him with a sketch, and it's one of those little pieces of memorabilia that has become, a holy grail.
Yeah.
Nobody knows whatever happened to the cocktail napkin, but it had 4 lines on it. That was it. And in that conversation during the course of the day, when it rambled 2 guitars, I said, okay, well, can we put this kind of a head on it? He said, yeah, that'd be great. And I said, what are we going to? And our success at that point, it's hard to imagine it, but the success at that point was so tenuous. We'd started making a few Charvel guitars. And I thought, shit, this weird shaped guitar could kill the momentum I have with Charvel. So I go, what if we put a different name on it? And he says, sure, let's do that. And I said, what do you want to call it? And he said, well, you're making it. Why don't we put Jackson on it? And that's how Jackson guitars were born. Wow. Is in that conversation, that very first day. I made the white one that Sharon paid for. And then he went out and did that first tour. He came back after that tour and said people coming up to him at shows asking if the guitar was a butchered Gibson Flying V. And so he wanted something more shark fin like. Okay. And that's where the second design, the black guitar, came from, which is the current shape of the guitar today. 3 of those guitars were made. So there is a total of 4. The original white one, which is a different shape, and then 3 that were the same shape. He got the black one at a dress, the dress rehearsals for that tour were done. Francis Ford Coppola had bought a sound stage, part of the old Paramount lot, I think, and had named it Zoetrope Studios. And that's where the dress rehearsals for the tour were done. And we took the guitar down to one of those dress rehearsals and gave him the black guitar with the intention to finish the other 2 once he approved of the black one. But sadly, 7 minutes later, he was dead. Yeah. So the other 2 laid around, languished for that year. We had started to get tremendous excitement about the black one that he had played for 60, 70 days. And so in the fall of that year, I went to Mrs. Rhoads and I said, look, I'm getting a lot of interest in this guitar. I won't make it if you don't want me to, but if you will allow me to, I'll. And she formed a educational fund or something in Randy's memory. And I said, if we donate 10% of the profits of the guitar to that, will you bless us making the guitar with Randy's name on it? And she agreed to it. So we're now in the late fall of that year, and we need a sample to take to NAMM in January. So we take the second one and we finish it in white and take it to the show. And that's the guitar that has popped up a year or a year and a half ago for sale and was sold to somebody in Hollywood. A kid, our momentum had gotten volcanic. Okay. So we went to that show with that guitar and with a little 10 by 20 booth, and we'd have 300-400 people trying to get into the booth. It was pandemonium. And Joanne, who had now become my wife, comes up to me 3 or 4 times from the show and says, hey, this kid's back and he wants to buy the Randy Rhoads guitar. And I go, don't bother me right now. Whatever. At the end of the show, she comes and said, the kid's back and he's got cash. I said, take the fucking money. So she sold the guitar to this kid. We didn't even know who he was. Don't know what his name is. And about 2 days later, she said, you know, you sold Randy's guitar. And I went, what? She said, yeah, you told me to sell it. I sold it. Got the money.
Wow.
I said, why did you let me do that? And she said, you told me to. So that kid ended up owning that guitar for a number of years. There was a guy working in a music store in Brea, California. The kid comes in and wants to trade the guitar for a guitar and an amp. And the guy in the music store realized what the guitar was, and he traded him a guitar and an amp for the guitar. And he had that guitar for a number of years. And ultimately sold it, 2 years ago, or whenever that was. So that was number 2. The third one was in my garage for years. The third one was the one that was supposed to be a tremolo. And Floyd Rose didn't exist. That guitar was originally made to have a standard Fender style tremolo on it. That guitar, it is in Texas. There is a guy in Texas that has that guitar. He had it completely rebuilt by Mike Shannon. And that guitar, like I say, is in Texas. So that's the 4 guitars. The Rhoads family has the original white one, or I don't know if it went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where it is, but the Rhoads family has it, or had it. They have the black one that he played. The last 2, the one that's in Texas and the white one that's in Hollywood somewhere, Randy never even saw those 2 guitars. They were shells. They were just wooden parts when Randy passed away, because we were waiting for his approval of the second one. So there is a total of 4.
Wow.
So
do you believe, and like I said, it's really cool to hear just the human side of Randy that you're talking about now, because everybody looks at him as this guitar icon and whatnot. And it's cool to hear the friendship part of the story. Was there talk of you guys collaborating and like being like partners and stuff like that too? Like, or was it just you were just making guitars for him basically?
we were just making guitars.
Yeah.
We were just making guitars.
And then obviously
things had gotten, I didn't spend actually that much time with Randy, because it was 2 tours, the original tour with the white guitar, and then the second tour that he passed on with the black guitar. And things were busy. I was busy trying to stay alive.
Sure.
I literally was at that point selling seconds out the back door to eat.
Yeah.
because everything was going back into the company. I had gotten to whatever it was when I started, 27, 28 years old, when I bought the company. And I had just made a decision. I didn't have a high school diploma, as I said before. I was just a loser. I decided I'm going to do something and not be a loser. In fact, there's a sort of a cute little story about that. Several years later, when Thriller was out, my friend Greg Wright was the guitar player on that original tour. And when the People magazine article came out, talking about the Thriller tour, the centerfold was a picture of Greg Wright with a Charvel guitar and Michael Jackson sort
Oh,
of
wow.
hovering over him. And I talked to my parents religiously every week. And so I called my mom on a Sunday, and she says, the neighbor brought that People magazine over. That's pretty good. You seem to be doing pretty good. And I said, well, yeah, things are going pretty well. And she said, well, your dad and I were talking. We kind of thought you were a loser. And I went, geez, Mom, that's kind of a hell of a thing. Well, we just couldn't figure out how you got smart enough. We didn't think you were that smart. So, we kind of can't figure out how you got where you are. And I said, well, it's hard work. But yeah, it was tough. Those first 5 years, I worked 16, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. No birthdays, no Christmas, no nothing. And by 1983, I was used up. I would wake up in the morning and not know where I was. And I would wake up with my hands. I couldn't move my hands because they were so sore. The crew would work an 8-hour day. And then I would work another 8 hours as the sole second shift.
Wow.
I would go through the shop, and whatever hadn't got done, I would go out and try to finish it.
And then you're getting people like Vinnie Vincent, you're getting like Robin Crosby from Rat. Like that's that next level of players playing Jackson.
Well, there was
at
that
the
whole
time.
San Diego, what I call the San Diego Mafia, which is Jake and Mickey Rat and all of that crew. There was a whole crew that came out of San Diego. Tommy Asakawa, you know who that is. Vinny, I knew a little bit before that. And Vinny and I were really, really tight. When he was in Kiss, obviously, Vinny's gone on to have some unusual life choices, whatever. But I really felt like Vinny was the catalyst. The Kiss had just come off of Creatures or
Yeah.
I mean they'd done disco music. I mean they were dead.
Yeah.
And Vinny is what really revitalized them and put them back on the map. And desperately wanted credit for that. And what he couldn't understand is that it was the Gene and Paul show.
Right.
And you can't fault them for that. But it was a titanic collision. And my counsel, and I can't tell you how many times we would sit and talk for hours, and I would say, Vinny, eventually the fans will recognize your contribution and demand you get credit. And he wouldn't hear of it. No, I want credit now. I said, you can't, those are not two guys you can push around. You can't do it.
No, definitely not those two.
No.
Definitely not those two. Mark, let's have you ask some questions. I know Mark was very interested in Jakey Lee, Dimebag with the Washburn.
Yeah.
situation, all that stuff. I have to
Love
step.
to talk about DB. Love to
Wonderful,
talk.
wonderful.
Okay.
I got to step out unfortunately for a bit, so you carry on the conversation.
Yeah,
I just want to say, Grover, it's an absolute honor to talk to you about this. Mark, feel free to ask any more Randy questions too that you can think of,
sure.
and then I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay.
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 But we're
Yeah.
good.
You're
Yeah, I
good.
guess one of my questions was that like basically you have Jackson and Randy is playing Jackson and but then Jake's playing Charvel. Is that still
Until I merged with IMC in 1985, the distinction between Jackson and Charvel was that Charvels were bolt-ons and Jacksons were neck to the body.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
in 1985, when I merged with IMC, Jackson became a USA brand,
Mm,
bolt-on and neck to the body, and Charvel became a Japanese brand,
okay.
Japanese made brand. So,
Interesting.
yeah, the distinctions changed in 1985.
Okay. That that makes a lot more sense. Um, did you have any interaction with Jake at all? Like
Yeah,
as far as
I've
okay.
still got my. So again, I don't mean to speak ill of anybody. I don't.
Oh,
Just my memory of the events. Jake's a great guy. In those days, in particular, I haven't seen him in years and years.
mm,
He had a very odd personality habit where he wouldn't look at you.
oh,
He would look over to the side and catch you in his peripheral vision. And I think you have to go back to that relationship between Ozzy. Again, this is just my experience.
yeah, of course.
Most bands, let me put it this way, most groups of people,
Hmm.
when they aggregate, will pick one person to be sort of the punching bag of the group, the escape valve, pressure escape valve.
Hmm.
So the target of the jokes, and sometimes it's a roadie, and sometimes it's a band member,
Sure.
but somebody is always that guy, you know. Well,
Yeah.
that's was Ozzy in Black Sabbath. Nobody wants to talk about that, but I
Yeah.
was around that enough that um, and it seems incongruent given the deification of Ozzy, who was a great guy. Okay,
Okay.
but he was not. I don't think he was treated very well in Black Sabbath. So then now he's out. He's had substance abuse problems. He's cleaning up. He's becoming the Prince of Darkness. And Randy, being the gentleman that he was, treated Ozzy with respect. And I think that from my point of view, that's what created this bond between Ozzy and Randy. Was that Randy treated him like a full friend. He didn't treat him like that dumb singer. He
Mm,
treated him, and I think that's what created that bond between them. And that's a testament to the decency of Randy. Randy's now passed away. Bernie Torme came in and played a few dates, and then Brad Gillis finished the tour, and
mm.
they hired Jake. And Jake has this habit where he won't look at Ozzy. Ozzy says something, Jake hears him, Jake will respond, but he won't look at him. And it's like, I don't know, that was weird. Well, Sharon was friendly enough with Sharon that I went I think the first dates that they played were the US Festival. I still have my US Festival pass. I went in with them. But Sharon had called me and said, can you try to get Jake to be a little bit more um, responsive, interactive with Ozzy? And Ozzy was going through, still had some substance issues going on and could be pretty complicated. I mean, he had this habit of grabbing people by the hair and banging them on the floor. And I mean, it was a crazy period for him.
Yeah. Well, and I figure he's also mourning
Yeah,
Randy. So
yeah,
there's heartbreak there's addiction.
with not much psychological way
Yeah.
to metabolize that heartbreak.
Yeah.
You know, so that relationship between it's not like Zach. Zach became a family member.
Yeah.
Okay, Zach calls Sharon mom.
Hmm.
Okay, Zach is probably one of the best things that ever happened to Ozzy
Sure. Yeah.
because he was Team Ozzy. Okay,
Yeah.
all in Team Ozzy, and that's to Zach's great credit.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the reason he lasted as long. I'm just sorry. My friend Joe Holmes played that gig for a
Hmm.
while. Great guitar player,
Yeah.
sweetheart of a guy. For some reason, I just feels like it never really gelled,
Mm.
and I don't know why. Because he's a great guitar player and he's a really really nice guy.
Oh, that's
Temperament wise, Joe Holmes is probably much closer to Randy than anybody else that ever played with Ozzy.
interesting.
Um, Soft spoken, intelligent, well spoken, nice guy,
Yeah.
and has almost been made invisible in that history.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I remember I heard about Joe. He was in Lizzie Borden for like
Yeah,
a minute.
that's when I knew it. I knew it from Lizzie Borden.
Yeah, I was a fan, so I thought he was great. I saw him with Ozzy on one of the Ozfests, and I thought he did a great job.
Yeah,
Like he really did. He held it down. I thought
he would be a great guy for you guys to interview
oh man, I'd
because
love to.
because his point of view would be very interesting
Yeah,
of that period.
I would. Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. I have to look into that. But it is strange that like you said, he's sort of been erased.
Minimized at least,
Yeah,
yes.
at least. You don't hear a lot of talk unless it's just folks talking. But from the Osbournes, it doesn't seem like there's any. And I'm not anti Osbourne really necessarily. I just
Well,
I
that's
think
a topic I would like to say something about. I mean,
yeah.
Sharon Sharon is a survivor.
Mm,
I know Sharon, just to backtrack a little bit. I don't even know if Sharon realizes this. I haven't seen her, spoken to her in years. But when I was working for Anvil, we talked about that. I was
mhm.
working for Anvil. I was the rock and roll guy. I would go out and, you need a case for a Marshall head. Okay, I know what a Marshall head is. I've owned them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Don Arden, Sharon's dad, had Jet Records, and his big band of the era, let's go back way into the 70s, was ELO,
Yes.
and very successful with ELO. And they had a guy that worked for them, kind of a famous road guy, John Downing. I don't know if you've ever heard that name before or not.
Sounds
He had teched for Jimi Hendrix.
oh,
Okay. Uh, and John's a big old, you know, guy. I got along with him great. He wasn't liked by a lot of people because he was he was real Peter Granty. He was we're doing it my way kind of thing.
yeah.
I got along with him fine. He calls one day and he says, "Hey, can you come over to Beverly Hills to Jet Records? The boss's daughter is here from England and she wants a steamer trunk." Sure, sure, no problem. So I go over to Century Park East and I'm 22 probably and Sharon's 17.
Mm.
I think it was one of her first trips to the U.S. That's how long. And I was completely taken with her. She had an accent. I figured she knew the Beatles because she had an English accent. Americans think everybody with an English accent knows the Beatles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but Sharon is a woman in a male-dominated industry, and she's a successor, and she is a she is a person not to be trifled with. Okay, and I appreciate the fact that she's had this incredible career and strength. And another thing that in an industry where relationships don't last. She and Ozzy were married for 40 years or something. I mean, that was a relationship that survived and worked. That's a hell of an accomplishment. So there are a lot of people who are not fans of Sharon. I understand that.
Sure.
I'm not one of them. I'm very pro Sharon.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad to hear you say that. I understand, as you said, why some people might take issue with Sharon.
Yeah.
I can understand why Bob Daisley might feel a certain way.
Yeah.
But I also kind of look at it from the other side as like she, like you said, she is a survivor. She's been through, I mean, her childhood wasn't easy. Her dad wasn't easy. Being in a male dominated business where she's just a girl, right?
Yeah.
Like she ended up being a powerful,
Force of nature.
incredibly successful woman who is not to be fucked with.
Right.
Um,
And Ozzy may have been the
respect her.
Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
She was the architect of the Prince of Darkness.
1,000%.
Her vision
Yeah.
and tenacity,
Yeah.
intelligence,
Yeah.
grit. God bless her.
I think the fact that Ozzy was successful, I mean, obviously, yes, finding Randy Rhoads is like lightning in a bottle.
Right.
Sharon drove that train, and he did need Randy. He did need Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake at the beginning. He definitely needed Zach when they found Zach.
Yeah.
I am a huge Jake E. Lee fan. I'm a big fan of that era, and I think Jake kept Ozzy moving. But that's interesting that maybe Jake was a little autistic and couldn't look people in the eye. That's what we'd call it these days, right?
Yeah, it was just, it wasn't that he was slow, and he just had his interpersonal skills maybe weren't well developed, would be maybe a polite way to say that.
Yeah, and that's fair. But I think that through everything, Sharon, right?
The key.
There would be no Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne. He could have been a fucking footnote after Sabbath.
Oh,
without Sharon.
Absolutely.
Like he was kind of written off in a lot of ways, yeah.
And she's the one that had the vision.
Yeah. So no, I it's refreshing to hear you say that because I do agree with you. I think that if you were on the wrong side of Sharon, I understand why you would take issue with Sharon. But if you zoom out big enough, understand what she created and maintained. It's very impressive.
And just as a sort of a footnote to that,
yeah,
we went around and saw a couple of those dress rehearsals in around Christmas of that year. The one uncomfortable moment, my wife Joanne and Mike Eldred, who was my first employee and who went on to run the Fender Custom Shop and has been an important figure in the history of the last 40 years of guitar. We're at a dress rehearsal, and Randy, we were standing there talking after the dress rehearsal, and Jake Duncan, who is, I think, the only witness of the crash that's never spoken about it. I don't think anybody's ever interviewed Jake, okay? And who was a consummate professional, okay? He walked up as we're standing there in Zoetrope Studios to give Randy his stage passes and luggage passes and stuff. And the moment got a little heated. Randy wanted to know when he was going to get paid. And it was uncomfortable to stand there and listen to this because it happened right in front of us, right? And I carried that memory with me for years. And then I realized the stress that Sharon had been under. She had bet the farm. Okay. If that tour didn't go well, she was fucked.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been in that position in business where the walls start to close in on you and you get tense and maybe not your best characteristics come out. But if it's survival or you do what you do to survive.
Yes.
And I think that window right there when they were getting ready to do that big tour that he passed away on, I think she had bet the farm. They'd had enough success with the first record, Blizzard, and the tour that they had an opportunity to do the second record and tour. And it was a big production with the castle and all of that crap. But she was leveraged out the yin yang, man.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people who aren't intimately in that situation to understand the kind of pressures that you're under when you've bet the farm. Ballsy move, man.
Big balls. Yeah. No, I think I don't think she's given enough credit. And I think she's an easy target because she pisses people off. But that's
well, again,
why
because
she
she's
is
a
great.
woman in a male-dominated industry, it's very easy.
Totally.
Oh, uppity girls, you know?
Right. Yeah, but if any guy behaved the way he'd be a genius.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's a bitch.
You don't hear many people saying bad things about Peter Grant, you
No,
know? And
no,
he was a tough character. And
absolutely.
those characters that sat on the backside of the English music scene, not the artists, the movers and shakers that made things happen, that was a tough lot. Okay. That was rough and tumble, hardball,
Yeah,
you know, no pussies allowed.
that's right.
So
Yeah, man, that's really
it's a perspective, you know,
no, and
of a window of time.
I'm really I'm grateful for it. I thought that was super cool. Um, so you move over to Washburn, and we work with another.
I left Jackson Charvel. Well, you know, 89, 90 happened.
Yeah,
Seattle happened. MTV said, rock videos? I don't think so. Not interested.
yeah,
And then I remember hearing Feels Like Teen Spirit that first time, and I went, oh shit. The page has turned. It's not that that's not valid. It's just that it's not this thing.
mm-hmm.
I'm used to this thing, and that thing is now over, and this thing is coming. And
Yeah.
you can just tell, you know, that the winds had shifted. And so I left Jackson Charvel, sold my last bit of interest and left. Moved to Beverly Hills. I lived in Benedict Canyon. Uh, uh, Priscilla Presley was 2 doors down from me, and Rosie Greer was on the other side of me. And I bought a Synclavier and a direct-to-disc, which was about 350 grand, and put it in the basement of Motown Hitsville Studios. And across the hall from me was Peter Frampton, and next door to me was Willie Wilcox, the drummer from Utopia.
Wow.
And I did 3.5 years of mainly sound effects and dialogue editing for horror movies.
Oh.
That's right. You know what Foley walking is?
Yeah.
That's right. As digital. Pro Tools was 2-track.
Yeah.
The Synclavier and the direct-to-disc, the Synclav was a full-blown 64 Synclav 64, and the direct-to-disc was 16 tracks of digital audio. There was no other box in the world. That was Michael Jackson and George Michael, Madonna, and you know that's the people who had that kind of technology. And I was trying to apply that to movie and TV. Well, people were used to tape machines. They didn't understand what that was. And I did that for 3 years. One of the things that I learned in that, I worked on Tales from the Crypt. I worked on, do you remember Dinosaurs?
Absolutely.
The Henson and Disney collaboration with the Muppets. I worked on that.
Wow.
And that's where I realized that mouse that everybody likes, that mouse don't pay his bills. Okay. And I won't say who because I don't want to get sued. But
Sure.
that mouse don't pay his bills. And that's a really rough and tumble industry, being a subcontractor in Hollywood. In particular on dinosaurs, you had to bid a number to do an episode. Okay, here's my number for the episode. And you're calculating X number of hours to do the work. And it's dialogue editing in, and it's sound effects. And the Sinclair was great at sound because it was 100K sampling. You know, doors went in, sounded real, and glass, ice cubes, it sounded real.
Yeah.
So you bid the episode based on what you think it's going to take, and you start getting dailies, and they have a runner bring you a daily with SMPTE on it, and so you start editing stuff, and then the second set of dailies comes, and they've moved things around, so now shit's in all the wrong place. You got to redo it, and so at the end of the week, you've put twice as much time into it because it changes every day.
Yeah.
And so every day the producer says he'll cover the overage. You submit the bill to that company, and they no, we're paying the bid price. But the producer said he would cover no, he doesn't have that authority. And then the next week it happens again and again and again and again. So it's just a scam. They're just giving you the business left and right. It's tough. It's a tough, rough and tumble. The backside of the entertainment industry is pretty unpleasant.
Sure.
So I did that for 3 years. Got married. Was getting ready to have a baby, and my first daughter, and decided my non-compete had run out, and so I said I better go back to doing what I know how to do, which is make shit.
Yeah.
And I got the job running Washburn, picked the wife up, had the baby. That daughter, that's my first of two daughters. That daughter is still a student at Stanford. She's earned one PhD at Stanford, working on her second PhD at Stanford. Moved to Chicago. Which was a complex experience in itself because they just drove me crazy. We want this, and I would set up the crew to make that, and then 2 weeks before they would say no, make this, and I can't get parts here for this and that and the other, and it was a rough 3 years. I did enjoy one part of it in that the success I had at Jackson Charvel was out of desperation. When I walked into the shop at Washburn, up in the near north side, just above Wrigleyville, the morale in the building was really low. The prior guy had been a terrible manager and very abusive to the employees. And I remember I got in the car and I drove into downtown Chicago, and I found a flag shop and I bought a pirate flag. And I came back and I nailed the pirate flag over the door. And I said, you come in here to be a pirate. I still have that pirate flag, by the way. And I turned that into a great crew. We made some great guitars. Ultimately, I had to leave because I just kept giving them so much trouble because they would want to change things. I couldn't make those turns on a dime. And that last fall that I was there, they decided they were going to use me for my name worthiness. And in a 5-week window, I flew from Chicago to Miami, Miami to Sao Paulo, Sao Paulo to Buenos Aires, Buenos Aires to Miami, Miami to Chicago, 4 days rest, Chicago to LA, LA to Sydney, Sydney to LA, LA to Chicago, Chicago to Tacoma, Tacoma to Tokyo, Tokyo to LA, LA in 5 weeks. 55,000 miles in 5 weeks, and I was fucking jello. Now, the notable event in there was the trip to Sydney with Dimebag Darrell.
Mm.
We did a trade show, and that was a hoot. That Darrell is somebody that I don't know how much time we have left, but I love to talk about Darrell.
We can talk all you want. Yeah.
Darrell was the most fun guy ever, and a real person, a person of the people. He had not arisen to being. He was still Darrell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I did in-stores with him all over the U.S. and then this trip to Australia. And I know you must have seen examples of famous people showing up for an in-store, and if it's poorly advertised and 10 people show up, they get pissed off. And they'll see the 10 people and be cursing, let's get out of here, right? And then the opposite is you have an hour and 800 people show up and they go, well, you got an hour, get as many through here as you can. And the routine is, what's your name, Bill? Okay, here. What's your name, Fred? Okay, here. Okay. And the people walk away with a signed photograph, a scribble on a photograph. They didn't mean anything. Darrell, if he went to an in-store, he wasn't properly promoted and 6 people showed up, 2 hours later, those 6 people had a new best friend. In the other extreme, if 800 people showed up and he had an hour and a half before he had to go do a sound check, he wouldn't leave until he saw every single person. And I've never, in the great Texas tradition, he had a comment, a joke, a gift, something personal. Hey, is that your girlfriend? Hey, she's pretty cute. Can she come back to the hotel with me? I won't use her too long. Hey, I got a beer, you got a beer. You drink my beer, I'll drink your beer. Hey, wait a minute, you got a shirt? Here, I'll take your shirt, you take my shirt. And he would pull the shirt off and hand it to. I mean, it was shtick that never stopped. And people walked away. I met a fucking guy, a real person, a human being. He looked me in the eye. He talked to me like I was somebody.
Yeah.
And that quality about Darrell was just so wonderful. A real guy. Now, the other side of the coin is Pantera in that era.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that could happen backstage before a show, because there'd be a large entourage of people backstage, and you must know that the drink of choice was a black tooth, right? And it could happen occasionally that somebody would get a black tooth with psilocybin in it.
Mm.
And somebody would go bouncing around the room because they were now, So when somebody offered you a black tooth, you'd have to say, let's go pour a fresh one, because I don't want to be the comedic entertainment of the evening. And how, as horrible as that sounds, to dose somebody.
Sure.
It came from, and it took me a while to figure this out, it came from the spirit of a 12-year-old testosterone-fueled kid who hasn't formed maybe the larger moral context of doing things. It's just horseplay on an extreme level. I never saw any malice of intent at all. It was just testosterone fueled 12-year-old boy. You know, what do we do to have some fun?
Yeah.
But he was, I can't think of anybody that I enjoyed knowing in this life more than Daryl.
Yeah.
For his reality. He was, that's one of my hallmarks. One of the reasons Chris Holmes is one of my favorite people ever.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get. There's no facade.
Real
It's just, this is it.
Yeah.
Like it, don't like it, doesn't matter. This is it. This is who I am. You can take it or leave it. I don't give a shit. And that was Daryl. That's the way Chris is the best.
Man, it's I didn't know Daryl, but I did meet him numerous times. He did an in-store at my record store.
Mm.
It was on the first headlining Cowboys tour.
Yeah.
They came through. I think we had about 300 kids lined up. They stayed, signed everything, took pictures. I have a poster you can't really see, but like all the boys signed it. Daryl wrote me like a note.
I have a note.
You know, the next time they came through, I get backstage. We're talking. Daryl knew who I was. He didn't remember my name, but he was like, he remembered my band's name because I gave him a demo. So he always would call me by my band name. He gave me his mother's home address and phone number. I still have it. It's over in a box over here with all my shit. I was like, well, dude, we got to keep in touch. And he's like, scribbled it on a cocktail napkin, gave it to me.
Yeah.
I saw Pantera 14 times. I hung out with him probably at least 10 of those.
Yeah.
When eventually my band got signed and we were on tour, Daryl and Vinny were at the first show, not to see us, but they were just at the show, right? And Daryl remembered me.
That's great.
So everything you're saying is true. Like, even in my limited experience, Daryl had that gift of like, when you meet him, you're best friends.
Yeah.
He made you feel like he gave a shit. And he was warm and funny. And yeah, I mean, pretty magical unicorn human being.
Yeah.
And that's not even getting into his fucking guitar playing, which I mean, yeah. But Chris Holmes is an interesting person you brought up because he played those V's and
still does.
Yeah.
Still
and
got
like,
the yellow one.
Iconic.
So my great story.
Yes, please.
Then I'd love to share. Hang on a second. So as I've said before, I grew up in East Tennessee. That's Chattanooga. In a very blue collar family. Nobody in my family had ever been to college. And 84, my dad passed away. And my mom sells the family farm and moves to California. And my mom had worked in a little department store in Chattanooga called Miller Brothers. And she had a bunch of little country ladies that worked at the department store that she was friends with. And they missed her. And so she was in California about a year. And 3 of her friends came to California, see Virginia, right? And she had the pony. I was living pretty large about then. Jackson Charbel was riding pretty high on the hog. I had a big ass office with plate glass windows looking out at the mountains. And it was, I was living, high on the hog. And mom brings her 3 little friends over to see how successful her son is. And it's all wonderful. And we're sitting around my big fancy office. And who walks in the office? Chris Holmes in shorts and a tank top. On his way to Fontana, birthplace of the Hells Angels, to see his mom, who had just been reconnected with the Hells Angels. Okay. And So here's these, including my mom, four little, 5'2" country ladies, and they go, "Oh my goodness, a rock star! Oh, can we take pictures?" And there's the picture. I don't know if you can see that.
Let me hold it up a little bit. Oh, there you go.
Right?
That's amazing.
So he sort of, for some of the pictures, he kind of huddled down so he's at their height.
Yeah.
And so he does that. And then he kind of straightens himself up and he looks across these four little ladies, including my mom. He says, "Okay, ladies, for the next picture, we got to get naked." And they went bananas. They just loved it. My point about that, and one of the reasons that I love Chris so much, that was a gift. He gave those little ladies a gift that I know they carried with them for the rest of their life. They went home, and whenever they would see one, "You remember that time?" And the crazy rock star said we had to get naked. And I know they carried that gift, which cost him zero.
Yeah.
Okay. But out of the generosity of his heart, he gave them this gift that they carried for the rest of their lives. That's precious to me.
Yeah.
That now, Chris, who has been clean and sober for quite some time now, the French lady that he's married to straightened his ass up.
Nice.
But I have this feeling, I'm not obviously a physician, but I believe that there are some people in life for whom one drink of alcohol, and normally polite, well-spoken, nice people, it's Jekyll and fucking Hyde. And Chris is one of those people. Ozzy, I think, was one of those people. Sober, you could never met anybody nicer than Ozzy. Okay, never. Keith Moon was one of those people. One drink, and it poisons their brain chemistry, and I am convinced that you put a drink or two in Chris and go, "Hey, let's go to the airport and shoot an airplane down." Yeah, that's a good idea. Hey, we could rob a bank on the way. Yeah, that's a good idea. We will need some money. So I raised my two daughters with the problem is you don't know until you're in it. And is it worth the gamble?
Yeah.
Because there's any number of people that you run through in life that they started with one whatever and it never ended until they were dead. Yeah. And is it worth that gamble that there's no way to know beforehand whether you're one of those people with that brain chemistry that you're gone.
Yeah.
And luckily, my daughters listen to that. The other thing I told my girls coming up was bullshit is out there. It's invisible. It's looking for you. You don't have to go looking for bullshit. Bullshit's looking for you. And I won't be with you when bullshit arrives. And you're going to have to summon up the ability to say, regardless of who's there or what the situation is, walk the fuck away. Walk away. Because it can get out of hand really quick.
Yeah.
I feel blessed. That's the great blessing in my life is that my girls are both in the medical community. My younger daughter's an ICU nurse at the Stanford Children's Hospital. So they somehow, in a world where young people are presented with so many terrible influences, it's easy to think kids have everything. No, it's never been harder to be a young person today.
Yeah, I agree. I have a teenage daughter, so I see it every day. The struggle is very real,
One of the best things, just as unsolicited advice.
Yeah, please.
My older daughter, who's driven,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt, started volunteering at the local hospital in Mission Viejo, California.
Mm-hmm.
And um, she's a student, 6-year student at Stanford on all grants. One of the things when you do community service stuff, that goes on a record. And when you try to get admitted to a good university, they look to see if you have some social consciousness. They look at grades, and grades are important, but it's also who are you? Are you a member of society? Are you doing things for society? And that experience for Leandra, uh, uh, volunteering at a hospital for 4 years, is what led to her to where she is. It's been incalculable. So my counsel for your girl is find something to be involved in that is above and beyond what she really wants to do. It becomes an enriching experience to just, get out and help people, do something for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway,
I agree with you. I think that one of the best things we can do just as people is to be of service to people
yes,
in one way or another.
yeah,
It's good for your soul and it's good for the recipient as well. So no, I thank you for that. That's great. Man, this has
so
been
back to music.
yeah.
What else?
Yeah, like what else? Okay. You're so your movement from after Washburn, I think it is.
Yep, came back to I went and ran Rickenbacker for 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. Like those are legendary instruments as well. And you were I'm perusing your Wikipedia real quick, but so you're Rickenbacker and then there's G&L. Is that right?
I never worked for G&L. I did some consulting for them.
Oh, okay. Well, then Wikipedia is full of shit. That's not surprising.
Yeah.
You did a little design work for BC Rich.
I have done.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I made bitches for Bernie way back in the day. There's a great picture of the Glendora shop with like 50 BC Rich bolt-on bitches.
Yeah.
Bernie was one of the when I first went to California, I went as a guitar player that first trip. And again, I was sleeping on my friend's floor. And there was two guys had a little record company called Calliope Records that had something to do with Black Oak, Arkansas. An attorney and a screenwriter, Lee Weissel and Ron Willens. Okay. And they said, hey, there's a guy, this is 73, 74. They said, there's a guy over in East LA making some guitars that these guys playing with, I think, Lou Reed are playing. You should go check them out. And that would have been Steve Hunter and Detroit guys. Anyway, and they were playing Seagulls. If you know what a BC Rich Seagull is, that was the very first thing he ever made.
Oh, okay.
And I went over and it was Bernardo's Guitar Shop on Brooklyn Avenue in East LA. And Bernardo was Bernie's dad. And you go in the front door, big open room, and there's a bunch of guys sitting on little short stools, hand carving Mexican acoustic guitars. And back in the corner was a bench, and that was Bernie making the very first BC Rich guitars. And we were friends all the way until his passing. And then Bernie's another guy that I love to talk about. I mean, we're talking East LA Mexican who drug himself up by the bootstraps and made something out of himself.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize Bernie Rico was the world, I forget, I think it was top fuel drag boat world holder for a number of years, 180 something miles an hour in a boat. Bernie Rico flipped a boat. You remember Wide World of Sports on Sundays?
Yes.
Bernie flipped a boat on Wide World of Sports at like 170 something miles an hour. It broke everybody, every bone in one half of his body. And that was the end of the boat. And what was the name of the boat? The Rich Bitch.
Hmm.
So, foretelling of the, BC Rich Bitch guitar.
Yeah.
And later in life, because Bernie was a natural sportsman, he was in the whatever the older class is of Olympic level skeet shooting. He was Olympic level skeet shooter. There's quite a sportsman apart from music,
Yeah.
but all built out of East LA. I mean, a guy who really drug himself up in the ghetto. An amazing guy.
Huh. I did not know any of that. That's fascinating. That really is. Is the guitar player from Canned Heat, is his name Henry Vestine?
Yep, that's him.
Okay. I was just doing a little research on what when we were talking about it, and I wanted to make
Yeah,
sure I
I
got
think
that.
he had cancer, and I think he was in bad shape, but I think he beat it. I think he's still alive.
Huh. I'm gonna look into that too. Um, you
It
want
would
to talk?
be interesting to talk to him. When we had a tremendous career, can he
Yeah,
audition for the Rolling Stones?
yeah.
Get out of here.
No, it's
He would be
great.
an interesting person to see if he remembers passing on this Tal Farlow trick to Terry Kilgore. Be
Yeah,
interesting to Terry and Henry together.
that would be amazing. I mean, you're dropping names on me that are kind of blowing my mind. Like Chris Holmes would be incredible. Like
Oh,
yeah,
Chris
this.
would do an interview with you, I'm sure.
Oh, you think? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll have to figure out how
I
to
mean,
get.
he's wild and crazy, but
Hey,
that's what makes him
I
so fun.
I like wild and crazy. There's nothing wrong with that.
You know what he does now?
Well, I know I watched the movie. There's that documentary about him
Which
that came
one?
out.
Not
Mean
Decline.
Mean Man.
Oh, Mean Man. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know he's touring, right? And
Europe.
yeah,
I think, Lemmy towards the end of his life kind of became more of a Hollywood guy than a European guy. And
right.
I think that European hardcore kind of crew needed a standard bearer.
Yeah.
And then Lemmy passed away. And to some degree, it seems to me like maybe Chris has kind of become the surrogate, for Lemmy.
I think there's some kindred spirit there for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Um, because yeah, Lemmy was. I mean, he was a pirate. He was like Captain Hook. You
yeah.
know. Um,
The Lunatic Fringe.
yeah, yeah. But I think I could see that reflected in Chris for sure.
Well, anything that I could do that would suggest something good for Chris, like I say, I love him dearly. And
Wow.
he went through a cancer battle here a
Oh,
couple of years ago, but beat it
yeah,
apparently.
that's
So
great. No,
yeah,
I was a huge Wasp fan, and I've always followed that guy's career, no matter where it went. But yeah, that would be incredible. 2018, you started working with Friedman.
yeah.
Okay.
So I had started a company with an ex Fender executive called GJ2,
Yes.
and that failed miserably.
Oh, that's too bad.
Um, it just he couldn't find enough sales, and so fall maybe it was 16. I think it probably was fall of 16, Christmas of 16.
Okay.
I found myself with 7 employees and 7 guitars on order, and I thought, shit, the walls are going to start coming in on me. I
Yeah.
better I better find something to do because I know how to make shit, and I ain't got nothing to make. And about that time, Friedman's was really on the upswing, with the BE 100.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the amp head to own at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they put on their website a picture of a telly and said coming soon. Well, I mean, I know enough of the cast of characters that I made a few calls around, who's making this shit. And the guy who was making it, Avishai Shabbat, who has his own brand.
You froze for over.
Okay, you can't build enough stuff to be serious that way.
Yeah.
Now, again, he's matured into something completely. Uh-oh, our internet connection has gotten unstable. You see that?
Well, you froze for a minute there. Just
Oh, it seems like it cleared up. I'm good. Are you good?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, Friedman is run by um, a guy named Avi Elkis.
Okay.
He's a hard-boiled, hard-charging kind of guy. So again, I'm desperate. The walls are closing in on me. I go around to the NAMM show in January, and I went in their booth 10 times, and 9 times he wouldn't see me. He was too busy. The 10th time, I got a 1-minute audience, and I thought, well, fuck it, I gotta make an impression. So I stuck my finger in his face, and I said, I can make your fucking guitars. April, I got the first order. May, I delivered the first guitar. 4 years later, we'd made, I don't remember, 3,000 guitars or more than 3,000 guitars, and it was going really well. In that window of time, both of my daughters, my older daughter came back from England. She got her master's degree at Cambridge on a grant from Bill Gates. And Annie was going to start nursing school in Northern California, and Leandra was going to Stanford. And so I was going to be alone. And I said, fuck it, I'm going home. I've had it with California. And I pitched them about doing Friedman in the Nashville area, which Avi was not fond of that idea. So that was the end of Friedman. We stopped. They have somebody else doing it now, but that's too bad. Those were good guitars. We really made a name for ourselves in 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
I liken the guitar business to a sort of a family reunion where there's a large dining room table, but there's more people than there is seats. And it's all about not whether you get any food, it's whether you have a place to sit down and eat it. And getting a seat at the table is in the public's eye, getting the stuff into the public's eye so that you can do something. It's very difficult because we live in this the most over-communicated society in the history of the planet.
Yeah.
People spend more time today trying to not hear your message than hear your message. The filtering, because if not, we'd never get anything done, right? Everybody wants to sell you some shit.
Yep.
So finding a way to get your message to penetrate is really the problem. And once you got that, that's a gift.
Yeah.
That's fuck the work. It's the gift of having a place to put the work.
Yeah.
It's the trick.
Because
a lot of people make nice instruments. There's a lot of nice, if you're a guitar buyer, it's never, ever, ever been a better time to buy a guitar.
Yeah.
The quality of instruments today is astounding.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's true. And there's a limitless buffet of places you can get them.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think that might be, those might be good words to end on.
Okay.
Grover, it really, I know Eric said it earlier. It's not only has this been an honor to speak to you because I've been aware of your work for so long and coveted those guitars with your name on them, but like this conversation has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, for me too.
Oh,
It's hard to get me to shut up once I get started. So,
well, I didn't want you to. And I wish we had a ton of time. And Eric is going to be so mad he missed a lot of gold here at the end.
well, if you ever want to revisit and with different stuff, I'm around. I'm available, and I appreciate
Absolutely.
Andrew pointing you in my direction. He's a wonderful guy. I love Andrew to death.
He was great. Yeah. No, this has been a real treat for me. And I'm glad you enjoyed yourself as well. On behalf of Mixtapes Podcast, we'll see you around.
All right. See you later.
I'll send you links once we get it all live, and we'll stay in touch.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grover.
Bye bye.